This content is brought to you in part by Real Marketing, the only marketing firm recommended exclusively by the Institute. Real Marketing utilizes over 25 years of expertise, and their products are built and customized for you to dominate any neighborhood, anywhere. Go to realmarketing4u.com. That's realmarketing4u.com. Also, look for past A State of Mind episodes with CEO David Collins as our guest. Well, Jack, I am so pleased to get to spend a little time with you today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tammy.
Excellent. So why don't we jump in? I would love for you to share just a little bit about yourself and the market area that you're in and kind of what your business model looks like today.
Terrific, sure. So my name is Jack Miller, and I'm with Parks Realty here in Nashville. I've been in real estate for 23 years, always with the same firm. And a lot of folks aren't familiar with Parks Realty because we're not a franchise. We're an independently owned and operated firm here in Middle Tennessee. We're actually the largest real estate firm in Tennessee, and we have offices throughout the Greater Nashville Area. I work primarily Nashville proper, south to Brentwood and Franklin, and my office is located actually in our corporate office in Brentwood, just south of Nashville. I primarily work in the luxury home market. The largest vertical markets that I serve are both the luxury home market and relocation services.
Excellent. And do you work as an individual agent? What does your support network look like?
Yeah, so that's kind of morphed through the years. So I've got a business partner, Robert Stutz, and we market as Stutz Miller Properties at Parks. And he and I have worked together for the entire duration of our career with Parks. For about half of that time period, we had a full-time assistant. And at one point in time, prior to the recession, we had a mid-sized team, 5 to 7 people. After the recession, it became just me and Robert with a full-time assistant. And unfortunately, we lost our assistant. She passed away several years ago. But interestingly enough, we realized over the course of time and with the changes in technology, a lot of the things that we used to have an assistant or need an assistant for, we no longer need it because we have technology at our fingertips. So, whereas we used to come in from the field to fax an offer, obviously nobody's doing that today. Everything's done digitally, and all of our phone records are at our fingertips. All of our communication devices are at our fingertips. And so basically, we determined we didn't need an assistant. So Robert and I work basically as a team. I'm the front man. He does a lot of the admin and marketing support, and we're equal partners in the business.
That's fantastic. And you raise great points about shifting with the market around you, not just technology, but just in terms of economics and shifting trends. Now, I know that you have a rich history in the real estate industry, and I'm almost there with you, just about at 20 years. But of course, you know that I work with my mother, who's been in 30 plus years. So I certainly remember the faxing. You were actually one of the very first members of the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing, kind of on the testing run of what later became the designations curriculum. And I always love the fact that thinking back to the Institute, how we've had to shift so much with the times and the technology, but that there's so many principles that remain the same. And I know one of the things that you did early on is you went after designations. So in addition to the CLHMS, you have the ABR and the GRI and the CRS. Tell me about why you think that's important to continue the education.
I think it's important for a lot of reasons. And I want to start with this too, is I have a bachelor's degree from William & Mary, and I have a master's degree in higher education. And I bring that up simply because The education piece is really important to me. The one of the things I've enjoyed so much about real estate is not only learning from our peers, but also being able to mentor new agents, new talent into the industry. And so the education aspect of what we do is of critical importance. We do have a formal mentoring program with our firm, but way before we had a formal mentoring program, I always had at least one or two, and sometimes as many as 4 or 5 new agents that I always like to train. So I'm answering this question a little different than you probably expected, in that although I learn a lot from my colleagues and we do attend classes and courses, a lot of what I learn in the business is what I relearn in terms of fundamentals, because I'm constantly sitting down with new agents and we're talking about fundamental aspects of the business, not necessarily, well, there's two pieces to it. It's not just the how to write a contract or how to create a database, but the fundamentals of sales and the fundamentals of dynamics and how to interact with your audience and how to determine who is your audience, and from who is your audience, who are you and how do you brand yourself? And so I love education more so. The designations are important, and I think it's important for my audience, which are luxury home buyers and sellers, to see that we, have a lot of years of experience and we have designations and a lot of education behind us, supporting us. But I also want to focus on the next wave of agents coming into the business.
That's a great point, Jack, because I think that as much as being a mentor is important in raising that next generation with good business skills, not just contract writing, as you say, but do you find that you also learn things about today's consumer from a new perspective, somebody who isn't kind of expecting it to be the same consumer that it always was?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I do. It's funny because I think I got distracted myself in answering the question, but as I'm hearing agents asking me questions and talking about scenarios that they're encountering, each time they bring a situation to the table, it makes me rerun through that process again. And interestingly, the answers aren't always the same because our markets are moving targets. It's a changing dynamic. So both on a national level and a local level. So the same advice I might give to an agent I'm sitting down with this week may be very different from the advice I would give to an agent I met with 2 years ago. In fact, I know it is, because the market is fluid. And so it keeps you on your toes to be able to help coach and mentor, other agents and brokers in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Now, I know also that that you went back and took the CLHMS class, the luxury home marketing class, again, 13 years after the first time. And I was pleased to have you in my training class, and it was in Miami. And it's so easy to want to take classes and that sort of thing when they're closer to home. But I know that you expressed how important it was to get out of your home market. Tell me your thoughts about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was by design. It wasn't because it wasn't available here. At the time, my husband, Harlan, was a newer agent. He wanted to pursue the luxury designation as well. And so I said to him, rather than take the course here locally, I said, let's find a market somewhere else where you have the opportunity to network, where both of us have the opportunity to network with other agents in a different market, because it opens the door to referral opportunities, and you're hearing things from a different perspective because you're in a different market. So we actually targeted Chicago or one of the coastal California cities, because that tends to be a lot more interchange with the Nashville market, but there were no courses available at that particular time. So Miami, a great city and a terrific market. We thought that'd be interesting. So we went to Miami. So for him, it was taking the course for the first time. For me, it was auditing, and it was just a refresher. And I loved it because I got to hear your version of the course, which is great. The last time I took it was when Laurie Mormore, and before it was actually a designation, was doing it here locally for us coming out of Dallas. And of course, she was Diane's predecessor with the Institute. So Robert, my business partner, I like to describe ourselves as founding members of the Institute for Luxury Home Marketing. I don't know if that's actually a thing or not, but we're calling it a thing. We're going to go
It's
with
all right. You know what? We will own you with that,
that.
right? That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But I always love when someone comes and takes the class again, particularly in another market. I remember once there were, and Miami is a very popular destination, I have to say, for those who want to do it again because they can get a little vacation. There was
Right.
a member from Hawaii who actually worked a lot with celebrity and high profile clients, and she came so that she could have a little vacation. And at the end of the class, she said, "You know, I have learned that if I don't stay on top of my game, that there's a whole group of people who are ready to take that business from me." And so she had her eyes opened for retaking it. And I know when I deliver the class, I learn something every time, both from the audience and something to be reminded. Um, what other sources of networking do you utilize?
Most, for me personally, most of my networking is done on a local level. We do, capture a lot of referral business, but most of my networking is on a local level. The firm that I'm a part of, Parks, is large. We've got a lot of offices. I think it's 14 offices, I believe, around the Nashville area. And each one is completely unique and different. So I do a lot of networking with other agents with our own firm. And we have a sister company, Village Real Estate. We're both jointly owned together. And so we network a lot within the two companies. But then probably some of the most special networking opportunities that I have are with colleagues at our quote competitors, unquote. And so I belong to a couple of different private broker networks that specialize in luxury home marketing. And so it's interesting. I'm sitting with some of the best of the best. And the one that there was a time when one of the organizations I belong to locally would not allow you to participate in more than one private broker group at the same time.
Hmm.
And then when I had the opportunity to finally join a group they've been inviting me for years, this is a very prestigious group of brokers from all different companies in the Nashville market. And of course, I'm 58 years old. And when I joined that group about 2 years ago, the lady who is in charge of that organization said, "It's so nice to have young people in the organization," which I thought was humorous because I don't see myself as that way. But when you're talking about people who sell multi-million-dollar properties on a daily basis, it's typically, at least in our market, is typically a lot of your well-seasoned brokers. They've been around for a long time. They've got tremendous reputations, tremendous education, and an incredible network. So that's some of the best networking I do is on the local level. Beyond that, any opportunity I get to go to a conference, to travel. I don't do a lot of conferences, but I try to get in a couple of conferences a year. So that's a great opportunity.
I think that's important both in making new connections, and also there's just nothing like reconnecting with people that you already know to solidify those relationships. I think
Absolutely. And I
that's important.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
always encourage agents when they're talking about taking courses, I always encourage them to go to other markets to take those when they can, because you mentioned earlier, of course, it's a lot of fun to tie it into a vacation, but it also becomes a tax write-off, which is nice because now it's a work trip, not just a vacation. So you get to double dip a little bit. So that's a nice little perk. But you get to meet people from another market, hear what other markets are experiencing. And quite frankly, I've learned some various different strategies from talking with agents in other markets that are doing things routinely that are not done in Nashville, and vice versa. So there's some good exchanges there.
That's a good point, and it makes me want to circle back to your conversation about the networking group, particularly the one that has the seasoned agents, the one that you're the young chicken in. Um, but you often work in a segment of the market that is where discretion is key, and where you're dealing with very large transactions, and there's a lot of agents out there that are unsure of how to move into that environment, and especially because it's so populated by those that have been there for a while. I'm curious about whether some of those seasoned agents are looking for newer agents to pass their legacy on to, right? The market has changed, and they may be ready to enjoy a little relaxation, but it's kind of an interesting dichotomy of opportunity and also something that's a little difficult to break into. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, there's always going to be some agents who hold their business so tight to themselves. They just don't have a spirit of abundance. But I feel like most professionals who are selling at that level um, embrace the opportunity to share the wealth, to share the knowledge. One of my primary mentor in our market is not with our firm. He was not somebody who was assigned to me through our company or anything of that nature. In fact, when I joined our firm 23 years ago, we didn't have a mentoring program. There was no formal training of any sort. No, only training you had is what you had from real estate classes, and you just got thrown into it. It's a completely different world now. The company that we work with has some of the best training and marketing tools, I think, in the industry to offer us here at Parks. However, my mentor is with one of our competing firms. Basically, I guess toward the end of my first year of real estate, I realized I definitely wanted to be in the luxury home market. And yet I was selling in a suburban area with very low price point homes, but I knew where I wanted to be because I came from a corporate business background, and I knew I had a lot of contacts, and I just needed to know how to break into that business. So I sought out who I believe to be and still believe to be one of the absolute best luxury brokers in our marketplace. And I just called him out of the blue and said, I love the way you market yourself. I love your branding. I said, in somewhat in jest, I said, I want to be you when I grow up in this business. And I said, I would love the opportunity to sit down with you and just talk with you about your business and see what recommendations you might have for me as a brand new agent coming into the marketplace. And he was terrific. He did. Not only did he give me that hour or so of time 22 years ago, but we have remained friends ever since, and we meet on a regular basis. And he's actually one of my largest referral sources, speaking of networking, because he's been blessed with a lot of business. And some of my very best clients are folks that he initially referred to me. So
Wow.
it's been a real blessing to have that kind of relationship. And yeah, there are folks I think who really want to pass that on.
And, that reminds me, sometimes you just have to ask, right? And just be bold enough to pick up the phone and ask. I did that once I was headed to Colorado, and I was headed to Vail. And there was an agent in Aspen at that time who had what was at that point the most expensive listing in the country. And I called and asked him if he would spare an hour of my time if I passed by on my way from Denver to Vail. Now, if you know geography, you know that Aspen is not on the way from Denver to Vail, but he said yes. And so I made the time to do that. And he was willing to sit down for an hour. And that generosity was really meaningful. But all he had to do is ask. So I'm glad that you said that. And I imagine that you respond in the same way when people might call on you for that.
Absolutely do. And that's where, when I'm mentoring agents, that's how that happens most of the time. It's because somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I would love some of your time. And then, or they've heard that I've done that with other agents, and they've asked if I would consider. So yeah, it's important that we do that, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm
Now,
sorry.
well, we've talked a lot about networking within the industry, and I'm so glad that you mentioned networking with our peers in the industry who are our competitors, but also our colleagues. What about outside of the industry? What is your greatest source of business or places where you spend your time? I don't want to call it networking in the formal sense of the word, but if you get the sense of where I'm going with this, what is it that you do in your non-real estate world that generates the most results for you?
I'm a very social person. It's interesting. What I don't do is, I'm not a golfer. I'm not a country club kind of guy. I don't have a yacht. Those are some of the things and some of the venues I think that a lot of folks think you have to do to be in the luxury home market. And none of those things hurt. They can be great opportunities. But that's not who I am. I'm a very social person. I'm a very earthy person. And like attracts like, I think, in a lot of respects. So if you look at my client base, what we have in common is it's a very down to earth, for the most part, down to earth, but highly successful group. What we don't have in common is, although I've been very successful in real estate and I've done well, I'm dealing with folks for the most part who are extremely wealthy. And I remember it's really interesting because I remember Laurie Mormore saying this when she first came to talk to us from Dallas many years ago, Laurie being the founder of the Institute. And she said, it's not important in the luxury home market that we live the way our clients live. They're not looking for that necessarily. They're looking for people who are authentic and who have offered discretion and experience and are well networked. And that's some of the very best advice I've ever gotten, I think, in the business is it takes away that whole intimidation factor. You don't have to have the same vehicle that your clients have. You don't have to live in the same kind of neighborhood that your clients live in. And so early in my career, as I was making that transition, into the luxury home market, which now is our playing field where we are on a daily basis, I realized that those things weren't critical pieces. So for me, I got off topic. I apologize.
No, that's all right, because you could be a walking poster, because we still teach that principle today that I myself learned from Laurie, but that still is a core value that we teach in the training today.
Yeah. So back to your original question is networking. How do we, network? For me, it's very social. I don't have a database of I've been in business 23 years. I don't have a database of 5,000 people. I don't have a database of 2,500 people. My database is a very small core database. And when we do a physical mailer, which we do a mailer probably at least quarterly, a physical mailer, when I'm looking at those names on that list, I know every single one of them. Every single one of those people know me personally. And it's not just, oh, it's Jack from Parks. They know who I am. They know that I have kids. They know what city I live in. They know what things I like to do. And more importantly, I know those things about them. And so I like to go out to eat. I like to go have drinks. I invite clients to drinks, to dinners, to all kinds of things, social events. And quite frankly, this is probably not unique to the luxury home market. It's probably not unique to the real estate at large, but I would say probably, 90% of my clients are friends. They become close friends in many cases. And they weren't friends who became clients, they're clients who became friends.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they're mutually exclusive, but that's just how it kind of evolves. So I make it a point to try to stay in the flow with my clients and their personal lives in whatever appropriate way there is to do that, and in a fun way, and try to make the whole experience. It's not just selling a house, it's being involved in their lives and them knowing that I'm authentic, I'm real, and it's not about the next sale. It's about being available to them and being able to be a great resource for them. And ultimately that turns into sales.
And that the feeling that you've just described, I'm with you all the way, because I love the fact that I share some of that with clients who become friends, and that's a lifelong thing. But also even in getting to know each other within the industry, I think about. I'm looking forward to getting together for dinner and drinks with you when I'm in Nashville, and I think about dozens of others of my colleagues that I can send a referral on a dime, because I have shared a meal with them. I have visited their home. I understand what makes them tick, and I know absolutely how they're going to take care of my referral client. So that's an interesting concept that goes both ways. I'm glad that you shared that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something else along those lines that we try to do, and I think it's very helpful, is I find myself noticing that some new client that I have, oftentimes new to our market, the buyer clients moving to the Nashville market, we've become its city, in our country. So as far as real estate goes, we're one of a handful of cities just really, really blessed with a huge inflow of buyers coming from typically larger markets to a middle market, town. And I still think of Nashville as a town, but I try to introduce new clients to some of my former clients and friends to help them immediately have somebody else they know in this town besides me. So I'll make introductions. I tell them about other friends of mine that I think they have things in common with, because it's first of all, it's the right thing to do. And it gives them a really warm feeling about who they're dealing with. And they also know, because I've introduced them personally, as somebody I think very highly of. And interestingly, we get a lot of referral business, I think, as a result of doing that. People trust that we are introducing them to good folks. And when they have an opportunity to introduce somebody to us from a business perspective, they know we're going to be treating them that way too. One kind of fun thing that Robert and I do is we bought a couple hundred Viewmasters. Remember Viewmasters? The things
Yes.
you click, right?
Yeah.
A long time ago, and we created a custom Viewmaster reel that has each of the images in it are images that are kind of iconic Nashville landmarks and things that capture the vibe of the town. So we have a picture of downtown with the fireworks, pictures of Lower Broad with all the people out in the street, all the fun stuff, and Vanderbilt University and the lakes, different things of that nature, music, of course, the Grand Ole Opry. So we have these slides. When we have a new client, we send them that Viewmaster. So one, if they have kids, we send it to the kids because it makes it fun. It's not digital, it's manual,
Brilliant.
And if it's whether they have kids or not, it's kind of fun because it's a retro piece and they can't stick it in a file folder. They leave it on the coffee table or on their desk. And people say, "What's that?" And they pick it up and they're clicking through to look. It gives, so I like doing that because it's fun and it really captures the essence of who we are and how we do business. But it also gives them a reason to talk about Nashville and hopefully to talk about me and Robert at Parks.
That is absolutely brilliant. And I'm thinking, I think that I spent some of my formative years in Middle Tennessee, so I'm thinking of all the images in my head that I remember from the Nashville area. And I'm thinking the Ryman, and hopefully you've got the Parthenon in there. So those are great things. I would love to see that, and I think that's a brilliant idea. And early on, you mentioned that relocation services was a big part of your business, and what you just described was a very different kind of relocation service that I think I learned from probably the same places that you did, is that it is so impactful when someone is moving to a new area to connect them with people and things. And that is so different than what once was the corporate definition of relocation services, right? And I can help you find your moving van, right, as opposed to who your new friends are going to be in the area. So I'm glad that you elaborated on that.
The whole relocation business has changed dramatically, Tami, because for us, in the early part of our career, first of all, if there were 10 people moving and within our database, our client base, 5 are going out and 5 are coming in. Today, it's 9 are coming in and 1 is going
Maybe
out.
one. Yeah.
Everybody's inbound. So that's a big change. The other change is it used to be almost exclusively corporate relocation. Someone was always moving because of a job. Now that's rarely the reason they're moving, because we've learned even prior to COVID that most of us can work remotely to some degree or have more, it can be a little more fluid in where we choose to live in the country, and particularly the luxury home market, because a lot of my clients, it doesn't matter. They own the company or they own the business, or they're certainly in the leadership of the business, and they can kind of call the shots. So it's a lifestyle move, not a have to move. So it's a lot more fun to work with somebody who wants to come here, as opposed to they think it might be nice, but they hate leaving where they were. They're coming because they targeted to come here and continue doing perhaps their same business. So it's the flavor of the business has changed dramatically, and it's made it, I think, a lot more fun than it used to be with the corporate moves.
I'm glad you said that, because we are allowed to be having fun doing what we're doing, and I think that makes an impact on our clients when we have that passion about what we're doing, about helping them make a move that's going to be really impactful for them. Is there something that has changed in your time in the business that you wish was still there? And conversely, is there something that you hope will happen in the evolution of the business? I know this is entirely off script, but it just came to my mind.
Well, that's a good question. And just for those of you who are listening, we didn't discuss questions in advance. Things I wish were, so one thing that sadly is that contracts have become infinitely more complicated and negotiations have become infinitely more complicated, because I think anytime, again, I'm only speaking of our market in Tennessee contracts, but I suspect that every time there's a high profile lawsuit, somebody adds another page to our contracts. And I've talked to colleagues who work in, for example, in the California coastal markets, and they sound like they're working out of a book as far as the number of pages in the contract. Contracts used to be a whole lot simpler. So that was kind of fun to have. And I say it was simpler because it was easier for the consumer to understand what they were signing. And I think more than ever, it's really important for us to really help. I've got a very highly educated, client base, but at the same time, we look at client contracts every day that are real estate contracts. They're probably looking at contracts on a daily basis too, but they're not real estate contracts. And I've actually had attorneys, high profile attorneys, who read contracts for a living, misunderstand some basic real estate principles. So we have to constantly make sure that we're on the same page, literally and figuratively. And that's something that I miss, is that contracts have become quite complicated, I think. As far as what I hope will change, one thing that I hope will change, and a dynamic I've noticed I don't much enjoy, is that because of all the technology that we have that makes it so easy to draft a contract with a few clicks, and to email or send a PDF or a dot loop or whatever the technology people are using to communicate and negotiate contracts. Agents who have grown up in this business, who are from the time that I joined real estate and before, mostly have, I think, a really good grasp of the fundamentals of the business and fundamentals of business, not just real estate. I think a lot of the newer agents who are in our business today, and some are really quite successful, it's a numbers game. It's, constantly they're sending contracts out by the numbers, not taking the time to get to know the other broker on the other side, not taking the time to present an offer. They're just emailing an offer. It's not just emailing an offer, it's presenting an offer. And I remind agents regularly, I said, it's not just about that deal, because you may email an offer and it may not get accepted. And that's the end of the story for you. And unfortunately, when you do that, you're missing a great opportunity, which is, whether the deal comes together or not, the way you present the offer and the way you engage with the other agent may make the difference 6 months from now or 2 years from now as to whether your next client is successful in their deal, because the agent you worked with 2 years ago says to their seller or their buyer, I know this broker, terrific to deal with, very professional. We have a history. So you are reinforcing your brand with every action you take. And I think a lot of agents miss the opportunity to reinforce their brand, who they are and how they do business on every single transaction. It's always an opportunity.
Jack, that brings us entirely back full circle to the idea of the importance of relationships with our peers. I wholeheartedly agree with you, particularly in the example that you gave in the presentation of offers, in whether or not you get that transaction, leaving a good impression that can be long lasting, right? It is a huge part of my business, and something that I share with my clients as being important. But it goes back to the idea of having relationships with the other agents in your marketplace. And it's not just a numbers game. It's a long-term relationship game. And I think we see that in the cycles. You've seen that as the market gets hot and cools off and all that, and we get scads of new real estate licensees, and then they go away and then they come back and all of that. And so I'm delighted that you shared that piece of insight with us, because it's incredibly important. And I love what you said about the spirit of abundance. That's something that I think plays right into that conversation, because so much of the numbers game is about scarcity.
Right. That's right.
And the long game is abundance.
Yeah, I think again, if agents, and part of this is corporate culture. The culture at Parks, our firm, is really good. It's definitely about abundance. Yes, we are competitors. Actually, within the firm, we're competitors to a degree. And certainly we're competitors with our colleagues at other firms in our market. But the reality is there's a lot of business out there. and we don't, someone else's success does not mean someone took something from us. And so I've always operated as I'm just handling my business, taking care of my clients. I'm not sitting around adding up deals and thinking how much commission I'm going to make and what I'm going to make on this one versus that one. And agents, you see agents who are jumping from company to company because they're getting a better split or whatever. Seasoned agents who are truly, I think, truly committed to the business are really successful, making a tremendous living, whether they're selling in the luxury home market or where they focus on entry level, first time home buyers. They can make a tremendous living as well doing that because they're passionate about it and they care about it, and the money follows. And so it's about abundance. It's not about trying to get the next deal from somebody else. I just never have operated that way. I understand, obviously there's market share, and we talk about the market that our company has over other companies or whatever. And that is important. It is an important piece, but it's not the piece that drives me daily in the business that we do with our clients.
That's so important. It's so important to remember to be authentic and to be pursuing our own goals, the things that make us feel fulfilled, as opposed to purely chasing numbers. So,
yeah, I think that's the word you use the word. I was asked to speak I was at a class the day before yesterday with our firm, a different office. And I wasn't there to teach. I was there just to actually support somebody else. And at the end of that, a new class started, and the instructor said, "Well, Jackson, you're here. Hey, talk to us about branding." And they just threw me into the mix without any preparation. But we talked about being authentic. That's where, again, I think that's where most of my business, how I earn most of my business, is the people I come in contact with recognize that I'm not just, well educated on the marketplace, but they know that I'm authentic and I'm giving them advice. It's not salesy. It's just good advice, and that we care about what they're doing. I say we, it's Robert. Robert and I have a very high profile clientele. We work with a lot of celebrities and athletes and very high profile people, and many of whom your audience would know whether in our market or somewhere else. And it's funny because when they've chosen us once again to handle their real estate, these multi-million-dollar transactions, they're choosing us because they feel an authentic connection and that we truly care about their business. Yeah, sure. Oftentimes it's the business manager or somebody who's making the introduction. But as far as why they choose us, it's about them seeing that we're authentic and we care, because we care about them. Because at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a high profile celebrity or if you're Joe Blow walking down the street, our needs are very fundamentally the same. And that's the part I think, again, a lot of agents who are wanting to get into the luxury home market, are often asking me questions, what's it like? And I'm like, it's the same as like everybody else. Everyone has the same basic fundamental needs, need to be, feel secure in a place that they live and know what's going to happen next and it's taken care of. It's the same needs.
absolutely. Well, as we wrap up our time together, I was going to ask you if you'd share with us any parting words of wisdom, but I'm feeling as though everything that we've talked about in our time together today has been just that, because you've hit golden rules, you've hit deep principles, and I know that I'm walking away with a renewed sense of this is why I do what I do, and this is what I love. But if there are any closing thoughts that you want to share with our audience, I would welcome that.
Well, sure. And I think when I say this, I would speak to perhaps some of your either newer agents in the business, or maybe they're not new, but maybe they're new to the luxury home market and trying to break into that part of the market. One piece of advice I would give beyond being authentic, because the way we present ourselves to that audience is different depending on who you are. But the thing I would say is, if you don't already have a high profile seller or a high profile buyer that you're already working with, and you aspire to enter into that market, you heard the term fake it until you make it. Develop marketing materials that are comparable to what you see people using who are already playing regularly in that field. That means have a website that showcases luxury. and it showcases you within that arena. Have business cards and have digital business cards, all of which work together in a package that look and feel like the luxury home market. You may not be actively working in it, but go ahead and get all the tools ready, because if you've got all the tools around you, surrounding yourself with that, you already look the part and you're showing in earnest. That's what you're going to do. And the other thing I would say, a very practical application of that is, I tell new agents all the time, Jack Miller and Robert Stutz, my business partner, we don't have listings. Our company, Parks, has listings. So I tell other agents at my firm, find other listings at your own company that are the kind of listings and the kind of buyers you would like to have when you grow up, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
And so ask permission of some of those other agents in your firm. Hey, can I help market some of your luxury listings, and showcase some of their listings in your print ads, on your website, in your emails, in your social media? Because what happens is, if you continue to reinforce that message over and over, eventually like attracts like, and you'll find yourself having that opportunity. When the opportunity presents itself and that person sees your business card, your website, your social media, they're going to assume it's a good fit. And the more you do, the more you'll do.
That's right. Jack, I am so grateful for you sharing with us today, and all of the sharing that you offer in your own marketplace and across the board. And I hope that our audience has taken away something meaningful, and looks you up the next time that they are in your neck of the woods or have an opportunity to interact with you.
Thank you, Tami. Thank you so much.